Welcome back to Eye on Politics. Early voting continues this week, and there's a special election many voters in Tarrant County are focused on. It's for the State Senate District 9, which was vacated by Republican Senator Kelly Hancock, who became the acting Texas Comptroller earlier this year. This is a Republican majority district. 3 candidates are running for this seat. There are 2 Republicans. They include conservative activist Lee Wambsgans, who's been endorsed by President Trump, Senator Ted Cruz, and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and John Huffman, former Southlake mayor, a conservative and a small business owner. He's been endorsed by Republican State Representative Charlie Guerin and Fort Worth Mayor Matty Parker. There's also a Democrat in the race, Taylor Ramette, a local union president and veteran. He's been endorsed by former Democratic State Senator Wendy Davis. We asked them all similar questions so you can compare their answers. And our very first question is, why should voters select you over the other candidates?
I'm the only candidate in this race who has worked for over 3 decades, not just for one city, not just for one union, but for all of Texas, for all of Tarrant County, and in multiple arenas, from being in Austin, working on legislation, working for conservative candidates, working to make sure Tarrant County stays red. I believe the best policies for everyone in Texas are conservative policies.
One of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of energy around our campaign and why voters are coming out and talking with us in really, really large numbers is because folks want a proven conservative leader, someone who's experienced so they can make a difference in the Senate in day one. You know, I'm blessed to be mayor of Southlake for 3 years, city council 6 years before that. Also served on a variety of boards and commissions at the city and the state level. Was nominated by Governor Perry to serve in the psychology licensing board. So I've gotten the chance to really serve in a real way, and I've got that experience so that I can make a difference for them and their families and their businesses on day one. I think that's what sets me apart from the other 2 candidates in the race.
Voters have a choice. There are 2 Republicans that don't represent the working class, and I believe that I do. I'm a working everyday Texan. I go to work every day in my workers union. I turn wrenches. I hear all the issues that working Texans are dealing with, and I want to help represent their interests in the state Senate.
Our next question, what are your priorities if elected?
And so we've gotten the chance to talk to literally thousands of voters, whether it's at their door or at our events, and we hear a lot of the same things. And they're the things we all talk about with our families over the dinner table. It's property taxes. Our out-of-control property taxes have to be tackled. As mayor, I cut property taxes 3 times in a row below the no new revenue rate. I've got a history and a record of tackling property taxes, and I want to do that in the Senate. Also, I hear so much about education, and I love what Governor Abbott did with parental empowerment and school choice. I want to make sure that no child is locked into a failing school district just because of their zip code. And at the same time, we have to fully fund our teachers and our educators in the public schools who will, always be educating the vast majority of Texas kids. So that's 2 sides of that same coin. Everyone's concerned with education. We've got some great school districts. We've got some struggling school districts in this district. I want to make sure that everyone's got the tools to succeed and to choose the best route for their child. And the third, really honestly, is it's basic, it's foundational, but it's so important, and that's our infrastructure. Transportation, our power grid, our water, both the availability of new water and also repairs to old failing systems. Those are the things that we have to have, those quality of life issues that are so important to our families and our businesses. Those are the things that I've experienced working on as mayor and winning real victories on, and that's what I'll do in the Senate as well.
I want to help increase representation for people who are working here in Texas, whether that be pay, dignity, respect in the workplace. I want to make sure that we have help for our veterans. Me being a veteran myself, I want to make sure that they have more access to facilities that they need, and I know they do, but we really need to expand on that. And the third thing is our education system is failing kids here in Texas. We need to increase funding for schools. We need to have more teachers and have these teachers better paid. Because when there's 40 kids in a classroom, I don't see how you can give those kids a fair and proper education that they deserve.
And it doesn't matter where I go, it's the same top 2 issues. And that's property taxes and public safety. And with property taxes, we have some great opportunities in November to get our homestead exemption from the current $100,000 up to $140,000. That's one of the amendments. And if you're over 65, there's another amendment. I'd like to increase the homestead exemption. I also support compression on the school taxes. That is where the tax rate is pushed down, but that does not take money away from public schools. Our public schools need to be fully funded. When I talk about public safety, it's both community local policing as well as border security. You know, President Trump and Borders Our Homeland have done a great job of securing our border. But you might remember those beginning days of the Biden administration. Our border was wide open. And Texas cannot, again, be caught, regardless of who's in the White House. We cannot be caught with an open border situation. I'm a big supporter of Operation Lone Star, but we have to, the Texas Ledge has to, right now, be preparing to make sure our border is secure, regardless of who's in the White House.
And then there's the issue of legalizing gambling in Texas, which would require a vote by the legislature, and then voters would have to change the Texas Constitution. We asked if they would support what's been proposed before, a limited number of resorts around the state that would have casinos.
My stance and views on that is we already have gambling right outside the border of Texas, you know, and they're bringing dollars outside of our state. If we do have gambling in Texas, I would like to see it with good paying jobs for Texans, union jobs. I, would like it to be, tax regulated, and I wouldn't want any subsidies to go to it to have it done. If they want to bring their business here, they have to pay full price.
And so is it something that you would support? If
done right, like how I just mentioned, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, yes.
Once you pass it, you can't stop it from being on every street corner. The thing is if people want to gamble, we're a short drive away up to Oklahoma to let that happen. I don't support expanded gambling in the state of Texas. The law enforcement entities that support me tell me that for every dollar it brings in, it's $4 in law enforcement and health and human services cost to taxpayers. Again, we're the 8th largest economy in the world with a $2.7 trillion GDP. We don't need the gambling industry in Texas. It's not a wholesome activity. I'm not said I've never been. In fact, I was in Vegas in March going to the Sphere. We saw the Eagles in concert, right? So it's just not something that we need in Texas, especially in Fort Worth. You know, I love Fort Worth. It's one of the last safe, walkable big cities, and I want to keep it safe. And the human trafficking and the cartel and the organized crime that comes in with some of those entities is concerning. Let's keep Texas, Texas.
So I've been consistent from the very start. I think Texans should be able to choose for themselves whether or not to expand gaming in the state of Texas. There are arguments for it, arguments against it, and I trust that Texans can make that decision for themselves. I will tell you what I do not support, and that is casinos and slot machines and 8-liners on every corner in every community. I would support a ballot initiative to let Texans vote on a limited number of licenses for these large-scale, multi-billion-dollar developments. I mean limited, like less than 10. And if Texans want it, I've said publicly I'll abide by that vote. If they don't, I'll abide by that vote as well. I think we can choose for ourselves whether or not we want to expand this in the state.
Of course, it would require a change in the Texas Constitution, and so you're saying that you would vote to send it to the voters and let them make the final call.
I would. I mean, that's one of those things that it's a controversial issue. A lot of people feel different ways about it, and I think it's totally appropriate to send that to the voters to make a decision.
There could be a runoff in this race. That will happen if one candidate does not get 50% plus one vote. The governor would then have to set a special runoff election. The winner will serve the remainder of the term until the end of 2026. All three candidates tell me they will run in the upcoming March primary, and the winner of the primary will run in the general election 1 year from now, and their new term will begin in January 2027.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. I want to put in all
Voters in some North Texas school districts are asking residents to approve new property tax rate increases. The districts holding what's called voter-approved tax rate elections, or VATER, include Carroll, HEB, Garland, Denton, Northwest, Bland, Rockwall, Crandall, and Peaster ISDs. We spoke with Libby Cohen, the executive director of the organization Raise Your Hand Texas, which advocates for public education. And we asked why school districts are doing this now, just as voters are also considering raising homestead exemptions in an effort to lower their school property taxes.
It's important for viewers to understand what's happened in school funding, especially in the last 5 years. So, as we've all experienced in our daily lives, since 2019, inflation has been quite significant. And that's had serious impacts for school district operating budgets, just like our own personal budgets. And in order for school districts to have the same buying power that they had in 2019, this past legislative session, the legislature would have needed to have invested $19.6 billion into public education. Now, the legislature— Additional dollars. Now, the legislature did make a significant investment in public education this past session, but it was to the tune of about $8.4 billion for the biennium. So school districts are still grappling with how to cover that gap that's been created just in the last 5-6 years, created by inflation. And now that federal COVID relief dollars have all expired, the legislature has acted, but not quite enough to fully make up for the way that inflation is impacting school district budgets. Leaves districts looking for solutions in all kinds of forms.
What are school districts doing to try to, what have they tried to do? Because some of them have had to pass previously deficit budgets where they tap into their savings to make the budget even out. And so what have they had to do, even with receiving new money from the state legislature?
That's right. It was estimated in the last school year that around 2/3 of school districts in the state passed deficit budgets. You can only do that for so many years. And the new dollars that the state has provided are certainly helping, and we're certainly an important step in the right direction. But you're absolutely right. School districts are having to continue to make really difficult choices. Different school districts are handling that in different ways. We're seeing programs cut, we're seeing staff reductions, we're seeing campus closures all across the state. And none of these decisions are easy for a school district, and all of them have a real impact on the students in those classrooms.
Republican State Senator Paul Bettencourt of Houston told us the state is reducing the school property tax rate by 6 cents. If voters approve raising their school district's property tax rates, that will reduce their savings.
It's your money. And that's why you get to vote on homestead exemption increases. But at the same time, if you vote yourself a tax rate increase on a Vader, it's going to cost you. And once that is increased, it sets in, and that's the permanent value that goes forward. So make these votes and choose wisely.
Early voting continues through October 31st, this Friday. Construction work at the White House. What's being added when Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas comes right back.